Good morning, everyone. This is Rich Berliner, and welcome to the Connected Virtual Tech event. Today, our keynote speaker is Darlene Pope, and Darlene is an industry expert in the digital workplace and smart buildings. And so thank you, Darlene, for being with us today and talking us through your area of interest. So before we jump into your presentation, I just want to encourage everyone to visit our exhibitors and our sponsors. They are the ones that have given us the ability to make this a free event for everybody. So I hope you will support them and visit their exhibits and all of the other chat rooms and other features that we have going on. So Darlene, without further ado, why don't you run through your slides? Thank you so much for being here today.
Great. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate the opportunity. I think it's tremendous that you're doing a virtual trade show, keeping people active and talking and communicating and even visually being able to see each other through the Zoom presentation. So I'm coming to you today from the comfort of my home office. I do still have my slippers on, but at least was able to get together and put together this presentation for you today. So
Darlene, before we go, I just wanted to reiterate the things that we talked about that were important during this stay-at-home lockdown: vodka, vitamins, and vegetables. So those are the three important things. And I know you wanted to include Bailey's in that too. So
exactly. As long as I got my wine before dinner and my Bailey's after dinner, I'm good. So anyway, what I wanted to do today was walk through, first of all, what a smart building is, and talk about a little bit about what's now that we're seeing with smart buildings and what's next. And one of the things that has changed drastically in the last couple of months is what's now. So what we're seeing is the business drivers around smart buildings have changed, but the fundamentals around what a smart building is has not. So I took the presentation and I've altered it to really focus on the components that are going to be absolutely critical in a post-COVID-19 world, because I do think that the workplace is going to change drastically. I think that we're going to have to get a much better handle on occupancy and location. I think social distancing is going to become much more of a norm. So as I walk through the slides, I've actually highlighted in yellow the components that are directly related to post-COVID-19. Happy to take questions along the way. Rich, I think, is going to monitor some of those questions and ask them as they come in. So please feel free to use the Q&A panel to ask questions as we go. So first, kicking off, what is a smart building? I think a lot of different people have different definitions. If you ask 10 different people what a smart building is, you'll probably get 10 different answers. But if you look at a smart building, it's really a building that uses physical design, IT infrastructure, and applications to become a very responsive and future-proof asset. What I highlighted here is that, the building needs to change to the needs of its owners, its managers, and its occupants. And right now, we're in a critical phase with smart buildings in terms of being able to manage the building based on real-time needs. And one of those real-time needs right now, obviously, is occupancy or lack of occupancy, sanitation, cleanliness, energy management. All of those are still very real needs. I'll give you a perfect example. How many buildings are currently running on a time clock that are vacant because everyone's working from home, there's nobody in the building, but the building is still operating as if it's 80, 90% occupied. So if you had a smart building, we wouldn't have to worry about running empty buildings, as currently is the case. So when I put together some observations, first of all, the business priorities have changed because of COVID-19. I think if you look back maybe 5, 10 years ago, one of the primary business drivers for smart buildings was energy management. Over time, those business priorities have also added things like space management, and most importantly, employee experience, employee satisfaction, employee productivity. But now, all of that's been put on hold, and the number one business priority is health and safety due to COVID-19. Employees want to feel that they are safe coming back to work when they've been cleared to come back to work. So there's a lot of components now that are focused on health and safety, occupancy, social distancing, a different workplace strategy. Are we going to really have 12 people crammed into an elevator? Are we going to have conference rooms that are designed for 20 people that only hold 8? So there's a lot of things to start to consider when you look at the business priorities and the way that workplace strategy is going to change post-COVID-19 and the way the technology has to change to support that. Another thing is there's no one size fits all. Please don't look at this presentation and think I have to do everything or every building has to do every component of a smart building in order to be smart. I mean, there's different types of buildings, there's different ownership types, there's different occupant needs. The needs of a multi-tenant commercial office building are going to be completely different than the needs of an owner-occupier or corporate facility or a college campus. When we go through the deck and the different components of SMART, just recognize that there's going to be a different program and a different plan for the different types of buildings and for the different types of occupants of those buildings. Things like public facilities, malls, convention centers, things that are all pretty much empty right now, they're going to have a different come back to work or come back to play strategy than other buildings. So every group's going to have different priorities and use cases. And I've attempted to document some of those as we go through the slides, but your priorities and use cases post-COVID may be different. And also not all buildings are created equal. So we have old buildings, we have new buildings, we have buildings that will never be smart, we have buildings that should be smart from the time they come out of the ground. We've got large and small buildings. You're probably not going to need blue dot wayfinding in a small building with small tenants, whereas you may need blue dot wayfinding in a mall or a campus or a large corporate facility with a lot of visitors. So just think about those things in terms of what's applicable on a building by building and a company by company basis. So I attempted to put together some primary business drivers, and what you'll notice about these is, this is a fairly old slide, but I've reorganized the business drivers to put health and safety first, because I think that everyone will acknowledge that in today's day and age, with COVID-19, we have to focus on health and safety, the quality of the environment, the well-being of the occupants, indoor air quality, identification of particulates or poor indoor air quality within the facility. Space management is going to be a huge business driver and criteria for being able to manage where people are sitting, how close are people sitting to each other. So those are some of the major business drivers. Now, energy management is still going to be a business driver. Marketing, differentiation, and brand, being a smart building to attract and retain tenants, to attract and retain top talent. I mean, those are obviously still going to be business drivers, but now we've kind of turned the world upside down to focus on what do we need to do first, and what we need to do first now are the components that are focused on health and safety due to COVID-19. Now, again, the approach hasn't changed. The typical approach when you're looking at making your building smart is define your goals, your vision, your use cases, the features and functionality, put together the business case, build a master plan to put together a comprehensive end-to-end strategy, making sure that all the different components of your smart building strategy are able to be integrated and that go together in a comprehensive plan. And I think a major mistake that a lot of companies make is that there's too many disparate initiatives going on, individual use cases trying to solve for occupancy, individual use cases trying to solve for energy management, different teams not talking to each other, people kind of overlapping on their initiatives. So really looking at the entire ecosystem holistically and putting together that end-to-end strategy and design for SMART. Because down the road, you're going to want to make sure that all of these different systems, applications, data sets can integrate, share information, and that's really what's going to make the building become smarter and smarter over time. And then also having a sustainment strategy to keep that building smart over time. So this is just a sample, and again, this may or may not apply to you and your building, but it's just a sample to give you a visualization of the different components of what would make up a smart building. Traditionally, people think of smart buildings as integration of HVAC and lighting for energy management purposes, and that's certainly a component of it. But when you start to look at digital property management, digital facility management, corporate real estate, looking at enterprise level applications for a smart workplace, that's when we really start getting into the impact on the occupants in the building. So when you look at a smart building, it's not only building operations and base building systems, but now we're also looking at the integration of those base building systems with enterprise systems. Things like work order management, things like room booking, things like, your workplace management strategy, being able to provide integrated mobile apps that do blue dot wayfinding and ability to book rooms and find points of interest and adjust your lighting and your temperature, dispatch an elevator. There's talk now about reducing the number of touch points within a facility. So as people are coming into the facility, they don't have to physically open a door with their hand. They don't have to physically push a button in the elevator. So really removing touch points within the facility is going to require an enhanced level of technology in order to do that. So sensors that open doors and have automatic doors for things like the restrooms, for things like the main doors of the building. But imagine putting the elevator dispatch on your mobile device as opposed to having to physically push a button in the elevator itself. So a lot of different ways that we can remove those touch points from the building and put them on at a much more personal level. So as we go through this, think about the different applications and the different technologies that can support your post-COVID-19 go back to work strategy. From an IT perspective, obviously, Rich, distributed antenna system, having the ability to communicate ubiquitously throughout the entire facility, Wi-Fi, indoor positioning systems, location-based services, collaboration tools, all of these are obviously very critical, but they all go together in this end-to-end comprehensive technology roadmap that I would consider a smart building. Because if you don't include all the smart workplace components, you're really not making the building smart. You're only making some of the base building systems smart. And at the end of the day, that's all going to drive that occupant experience, which is your enhanced comfort and convenience, your personal controls, your health and safety, and all the other use cases and business drivers that you're trying to meet. So with that, again, if it isn't connected, it isn't smart. And a lot of buildings have these individual components, but they're not connected. They don't share data. They're not smart enough to start to do predictive operations and really have true IoT applications. And I'll give you a perfect example. A car pulls into the parking garage at the P3 level and automatically dispatches an elevator to the P3 level. So you didn't have to push an up button. The building knows that you pulled in. The building knows you're going to need an elevator. So by the time you get out of your car and walk to the elevator lobby, the elevator's already there. The doors are open. And if it's smart enough, it knows what floor you work on, and it'll automatically take you to the 6th floor and drop you off at your suite. That's a great example of an IoT connected application that, again, will support this post-COVID limit of touch points within the facility, but it also enhances that user experience. It also makes you much more productive and efficient because you didn't have to stand in the elevator lobby, push a button, wait for an elevator to come, et cetera. So when you look at starting to connect all of these things, even things like visitor management, security, screening, identification of where people are in the facility, data and analytics, digital media, all of these components should be connected, should have a central data warehouse, should be able to share information with other systems. And I think occupancy, you're going to hear me say the word occupancy and people counting and presence detection, location-based services a lot during this presentation because I think occupancy is our #1 data point, and it drives just about everything that we do in the building. It drives energy usage, HVAC, lighting, social distancing, room booking, code compliance. There are so many things that occupancy drives. If you haven't launched a smart building journey, I would start with occupancy. And if we can't solve for real-time occupancy and location-based occupancy, then your building is not going to be smart. Rich, I don't know if there are any questions coming in. I'll try to pause every once in a while to see if we can take any of those.
I've got one, Darlene, to start.
Yep.
When you talked about blue dot wayfinding, that's not a terminology I'm familiar with, but it sounds like that leads me into E911 stuff. If you need to find who's in the building specifically, so you've got somebody on the 50th floor that has a heart attack, God forbid, and they go down, and now they call 911, and 911 shows up at the front door of a 50-story building and says, "Okay, where are they?" And the receptionist or the security guy goes, "I don't know." How
exactly. That's a great use case for location-based occupancy. So when you look at blue dot wayfinding, it's similar to a GPS outside the building. So when anybody who's used a GPS understands that, the GPS is tracking the location of your phone, and it's showing you as the blue dot along the map, and it's telling you how to get from point A to point B, and it's even smart enough to tell you if there's traffic up ahead, because it's counting occupancy on the road up ahead and translating that into digital information that shows up as traffic. So if you take that same philosophy and you apply it inside the building, blue dot wayfinding will allow you to literally transfer from the GPS outside the building to an IPS, an indoor positioning system, inside the building to navigate your way to a suite, a conference room, identify various points of interest. And I have a slide coming up here in just a minute. I'll be happy to dive into that a little bit more, because I think that blue dot wayfinding and those location-based services, again, are critical for post-COVID-19 applications.
Yep, perfect. Go ahead.
So, back to some of the basics: building automation, HVAC controls. Again, using system automation to react in real time to occupancy levels. I guarantee you, with most of these buildings being almost vacant right now, they're still operating as if they were fully occupied, except for the Rudin portfolio in New York, of course, if John's watching. Hi, John. But, using technologies like Nantum to be able to run your HVAC system based on real-time occupancy is absolutely critical, not only in a COVID world, but just in terms of being able to run the building in a much smarter and more efficient manner. And then you look at things like supervisory control and monitoring as an overlay to be able to monitor and control that portfolio remotely. So now, as opposed to sending engineers into the buildings to have to run the buildings on site, being able to have the ability to remotely access the BMS and the access control system and the elevator system and the lighting system and the energy management system, to be able to do that without physically having to send people into the workplace, that's, again, critical in a post-COVID-19 world. So we don't have to physically send people to the workplace.
Darlene, question. Someone asked the question, will these slides be available? So we need to integrate those and make sure that people can get these slides after the fact. So I just want to mention that the fellow who asked the question, the answer is yes, we will make these slides available.
Sure, great, absolutely. The supervisory control and monitoring also gives you a single pane of glass to look at your entire portfolio. So not just one building, but suppose as a corporate owner-occupier, you want to understand what is the real-time occupancy in my entire portfolio right now. Or, perfect example, with WeWork, if we've got, some locations that are completely empty and other locations that have some people in them, wouldn't it make sense to move people to a single location as opposed to having, a couple of stragglers in some locations and not in others? So really understanding where my buildings are occupied. And learning, based on that occupancy, how do we develop a different workplace strategy? Do we really need as much space as we thought we needed? But really, in terms of being able to look at your entire portfolio, drill down on a building-by-building basis or system-by-system basis through that supervisory control and monitoring platform is going to help with operations, energy management, sustainability, remote operations, data collection, all of the above. Now, what's interesting is lighting. We've looked at lighting systems change from simply a means of illumination to an intelligent system that can provide us a lot of data about the workplace. Now there's even talk about ultraviolet lights for sanitation purposes. So being able to use those lighting systems and different types of light to actually, kill germs within the facility. But even prior to that, we looked at lighting as a digital ceiling, an opportunity to be able to identify movement within the space, occupancy within the space, and there are a lot of lighting systems that have that level of intelligence to be able to provide basic occupancy data. Motion sensors have been around for many, many years. And a motion sensor is a very simple way to provide a basic level of occupancy. Is this room occupied or unoccupied? Was this room used today? Do we need to clean this room because this room was used today? So lighting is now contributing to our occupancy and our health and wellness in a way that it was never done before. If you look at human-centric circadian lighting and being able to mimic natural daylight and contribute to health and wellness through that circadian lighting rhythm, that's another great way to help contribute to your employees' health and wellness. We look at daylight harvesting, task tuning through dimmable, addressable, and tunable LEDs. And again, fast forward to a very smart workplace, being able to provide personal lighting control for that enhanced occupant experience. Tying it to the mobile app so that you can adjust your lights through your mobile app, or again, taking it one step further, the building is smart enough to know how you like your lighting, so as you walk into a certain office or a certain room, the lights can automatically adjust based on your specific preferences. So lighting systems have evolved from just being a way to light the space to occupancy, location detection, and now this contribution to health and wellness in a lot of different ways. So let's talk about space usage and occupancy monitoring, because I could probably do an entire full-day presentation just on the value of occupancy. In a post-COVID world, and I keep saying post-COVID because I hope we get to post-COVID very, very quickly here instead of active COVID, but there's going to be so many requirements and change of how we run the workplace based on what we've learned with COVID. Things like who sat in this space 2 hours ago? Is the person that sat here, or did I sit next to someone who may be contagious, who may have just tested positive? How do we know that? There have been many instances, I'm sure, with even people that are on this call, where you find out that a coworker tested positive. Well, do you know if you were exposed to that coworker? So when you look at real-time occupancy, what spaces are occupied, what spaces are unoccupied, and even tying it down to who occupied that space, how long were they there, who else was exposed to that person? Go back 3, 4, 6 months ago. Even having these conversations raised all kinds of concerns about personal privacy and Big Brother is watching, and we don't want people to know where we are and where we sat. Well, guess what? That's all changed. That's all we want to know. Where are people sitting? Are people sitting too closely together? How many people are in this conference room? We want to be able to send the cleaners into a conference room as soon as that meeting is over so that they can make sure that it's clean for the next group. We want to be able to know, was there someone infected on this floor and who else was exposed to them? So it's really changed the conversation about that whole balance between personal privacy and health and wellness and protection against exposure to COVID.
Right,
so a lot of things have changed around that.
We had a question come in. This is a great one. Perfect timing. Do you see the need of tracking people within buildings down to a specific area? If so, is this tied to life post-COVID or beyond? And what technology would you use? I think you answered the first parts of that. What technologies would you use?
Yeah, so great question. So before COVID, we're advocating for occupancy detection, location-based services, for a lot of other use cases, things like doing dynamic assignment of space and restacking of space, understanding how different groups work together, things like tracking visitors within the space, things like making sure that every visitor has an escort. there are so many use cases for location-based services even before COVID. Now with COVID, absolutely, you're going to be looking at who came into the facility. You know, there's talk about having to take people's temperature, you know, when they walk into the building, which I'm not even going to weigh in on that one because, you know, I'm going to focus strictly on the technology side of it. But if you identify that someone was contagious, and whether it's COVID or whatever the next disease or issue is, do we even have the data to monitor where that person went and who they were exposed to? And the answer is no, we don't. But if you use location-based services, occupancy tracking, and you can identify exactly where people are within the facility, as I said, it does everything, you know, it contributes so much to all these different use cases, but especially in terms of understanding who's where. And, you know, if you take it to an extreme, you can even identify, are there too many people in the elevator right now? Is that violating our social distancing guidelines? Are there too many people in this conference room right now? Are people sitting too closely together? You know, and not necessarily to be used for enforcement purposes, but if you don't have the data to address the behavior, you're not going to be able to change the behavior. So at least understanding how people are using the workplace post-COVID-19.
Right.
So,
then you're talking about taking temperature of, as you walk into a space, they're using heat sensing technology to, you know,
yep.
look and see what the temperature of the people walking in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, another great use of technology to help make sure that the occupants of the building are healthy and safe. But again, more on that occupancy data applications. You know, these are a couple of screenshots, and you know, no favoritism towards any one vendor in particular. But being able to identify what desks are occupied and unoccupied, so that you can sit in an area where you're not on top of a bunch of other people. But also understanding, you know, maybe even putting information around what areas were cleaned and disinfected, and you know, is anybody really going to want to use a phone booth without knowing that that phone booth was cleaned after the last person left? Being able to use that data for cleaning schedules and dispatching cleaners. Again, as I mentioned, suppose there's a large meeting that ended and you need to send the cleaners in before the next large meeting comes into it. So if you tie all this together, it benefits energy management, it benefits space management, it benefits safety and security, your operational efficiencies. It literally contributes to everything. And I'll be curious to see how companies start to use occupancy tracking and location-based services to support all of these use cases going forward. And there's so many more use cases for this data. I absolutely think it's the #1 most critical data point that we need to operate buildings for all of these reasons.
Yep. So another question that came in, moving forward, do you think it's going to be practical to work off a unified structured cabling transport design, or will dedicated parallel networks be necessary?
Well, you know, I think that's really an IT question for each individual building owner or enterprise. In my past lives, we worked with a variety, you know, literally hundreds of different clients all over the world. Some prefer to be on a single infrastructure. I actually had a slide in here showing a single unified building infrastructure, structured cabling, and everything runs over the same network. There's a lot of IT groups that prefer to have the facilities network separate from the enterprise network for a variety of different reasons. So I think that's really more of an enterprise level IT discussion in terms of how the IT department wants to have physical separation or virtual separation of those networks. Now, it is possible to integrate physical networks without the data and the information that you're getting from those networks without having to combine the networks physically. So you can still take data from the facilities network, from your occupancy sensors and your lighting and your HVAC and your access control and all those things, and use that data and share that data with the enterprise level systems like work order management, room booking, employee satisfaction, and all those other enterprise systems, and you can use the data and integrate them without them having to be physically integrated. But I think there's two schools of thought in terms of whether that should all be on one single physical infrastructure or on two separate infrastructures. Now, in a multi-tenant office building, you almost have to go on two different infrastructures, obviously, because the building owner would put in the facility network, and each individual tenant's going to have their enterprise network and their enterprise applications running there. But you still have the opportunity to integrate them, even at a tenant-by-tenant level. So,
Got it.
Hope that answers your question.
Yep, very much.
Yeah. Smart workplace mobile apps. We've seen, a lot of adoption on mobile apps for a variety of different use cases, like room booking, access control, temperature control, lighting control. Pulling all those together in an integrated app where there's integration at the app level and having it all in a single user interface, I think is going to be critical to that user experience going forward. And some of the use cases or some of the data points that would be valuable to put on that app are things like occupancy data visualization. And that's where the occupants of the building can pull up a digital floor plan and see what desks are occupied, unoccupied, what rooms are occupied, unoccupied, even showing heat maps of how much has this area been used today, which would give you some indication as to, how frequently a phone room was used, or, again, for the COVID-19 space management and distancing purposes. Another use of that occupancy data is for cleaning purposes, or dispatching cleaning. Location-based services, was this room even cleaned? So being able to visualize on that floor plan, maybe the room is green, that shows that yes, this room was cleaned and it's okay for you to use. So a lot of different things that you can integrate into that mobile app. We talked about the blue dot wayfinding, visitor management, access control, a variety of different enterprise features. There's so many things that can be built into that app.
I'm asking this question with sarcasm, but is the tenant amenity platform different than the workplace mobile app? And is that tenant amenity platform just a, way to complain? Oh, it's too cold in my office. Oh, I didn't know the cleaners didn't do me right. Is that more whining and complaining rather than, is there a difference between smart workplace mobile app and a tenant amenity platform for people to just vent?
Well, no, I think they're similar, but if what I would consider a fully integrated smart workplace app is an app that it's kind of a bundled app that has all of those features in a single user interface, so that you don't have to open up one app for your access control and one app for your work order management and your complaining and one app for your occupant satisfaction feedback. It's all in a user interface where the occupants have easy access to all the different features that they need. And again, going back to, no two buildings are alike, and different clients are going to want different features in their mobile app based on what the features are that their occupants use the most, they're the most valuable to them. So I think when you're looking at developing a workplace mobile app, again, you have to go through that prioritization of use cases, features and functionality. What tools do you want to give people in the palm of their hand? Now, recognize that app is central to your location-based services, because when you look at what we call people tracking or occupancy detection, it doesn't have to be from a sensor under your desk. It doesn't have to be a sensor in the ceiling. It can be through that mobile app. I mean, that mobile app is your number one sensor walking through the entire facility. It tells you who's where, when, where they went, what they're doing, what they need, what their preferences are, if they're too hot and too cold. So I think the mobile app is the number one tool to be able to not only connect and communicate with the occupants, but also to provide all of those location-based services that we've been talking about.
Can I wrap my E911 question into that tenant amenity? So if someone knows that there is an accident on their floor, they can use that Smart Buildings Workplace app to alert people?
Absolutely, because it identifies it identifies the location of the device. And even, 10, 15 years ago, when we first started putting DAS systems in buildings, when you look at GPS and location-based services in terms of E911, it gives you the X and Y coordinates, but not the Z coordinate. So when you have a DAS system in a building for fire and life safety, it identifies within the nearest access point, and it has the ability to do triangulation to identify the location of that device within the facility. And we can associate the location of a device with a person, even in an emergency, because 99 times out of 100, the first thing somebody is going to grab in the event of an emergency is their cell phone, because they're going to want to call, exactly. So people always say, well, you're really only tracking phones and you're not tracking people. I'm like, well, who's going to leave their phone back, in the event that there's a fire or shelter in place? So it's the first thing you're going to grab.
So the question, the person asked to follow up that, so what are you saying that we need blue dot? What technology is she suggesting for blue dot wayfinding? But blue dot wayfinding is the technology, correct?
Well, so it requires some type of an indoor positioning system. That can be done over Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. There's discussion about whether or not that can be 5G triangulation within the facility. So there's got to be a physical system within the building. The same way we have a GPS outside the building, you have to have an IPS inside the building. As a matter of fact, that's a great lead into my next slide. An indoor positioning system is able to identify the location of that device within the facility. And you've got to design an indoor positioning system similar to the way that you would design a DAS system in terms of doing a survey of the space and determining how granular do you want that data to be, right? So if you want to get down to the desk level, you've got to have a lot more Wi-Fi access points or a lot more Bluetooth beacons to be able to get a much more granular identification of the location of that device. So putting in a DAS system doesn't necessarily give you the location of that phone down to the desk level. Putting in an indoor positioning system with multiple access points or beacons or whatever technology you're using is going to give you the ability to triangulate down to the location of that device within about a meter. And there are a lot more technologies that are coming into the space that I think can even get you more granular. So for that indoor positioning to work, it's got to have, for the blue dot wayfinding to work, that's where you need to put in the indoor positioning system. And in most cases, you can build it off of your existing Wi-Fi network. So you look at virtual Bluetooth beacons, supplemental beacons that you put in individual rooms where you can identify and count how many people are in that room. So going back to my example earlier, especially again, post-COVID-19, if we're only allowed to have 8 people in this room, it can identify when the 9th person walks into that room and push something to that 9th person and say, I'm sorry, but you've exceeded the maximum for this room. Please limit the number of people to only 8. You can do geofenced areas. You can identify, when people walk in and out of a certain geofenced area, like a conference room or the cafeteria. So these are all the different features that an indoor positioning system can provide. And again, location of people within the space. Where are my people? Suppose you do implement some type of a health and wellness scan or screening for employees and or visitors, and those people are green, and so that those people are allowed to come into the facility. But if someone doesn't pass that test, they're not allowed in the facility. So through an indoor positioning system, you can determine whether or not you have people that aren't authorized to be in the facility for whatever reason, and identify the location of those people. Gotcha. So a lot of different things that you can do with that indoor positioning. So let's touch a little bit on visitor management and security. Traditional visitor management, you can pre-register visitors via an internet portal or a mobile device. Post 9/11, we started looking at those visitor management platforms running through a global database, terrorist watch list, some type of screening to make sure that those visitors were cleared to come into the facility. So fast forward, how is that going to change with COVID? Are we going to have, people screened that they're cleared to come in, that they haven't been exposed to COVID, that they aren't currently sick with COVID, that maybe they've got the antibodies, that it's okay for them to be around other people, even keeping that 6 feet social distancing. So thinking about your visitor management strategy and your security screening, and possibly even staggering the number of people that can come in at a certain time, or scheduling the use of elevators so that you don't have 20 people that need an elevator all at the same time. Almost scheduling your visitor management in the same way you would schedule room usage, because you can't have, a huge number of visitors. You've got to be able to stagger the timing of how those people are coming in. And I'll tell you, I don't think people have really looked at that elevator, vertical transportation, social distancing issue as much as they need to, because I think that's probably the number one commonly used room in a building where it's very difficult to monitor, manage, control, access, and crowding, and touch points. So there's a lot of discussion around, how do we manage our elevators and our elevator usage going forward.
That's a new terminology you've coined for me. Vertical transportation. That one I hadn't heard before. But
there you go.
What you're saying, and that's an important aspect of this. If you've been into new elevators in the Fashion District in New York, they're 3 by 3. You could fit 6 people, but literally you're standing shoulder to shoulder. So that's going to be an issue, of course.
Yeah. Well, you travel around the world and you get into an elevator in, in China or Asia or in India, and, there's 50 people on an elevator that's supposed to hold 20. You can't have that anymore. But even in a city like New York, you've got a 40, 50, 60-story office building. How are you you can't tell everybody to use the stairs. How are you going to say, sorry, we can only get 6 people on an elevator? They're talking about even staggering times for employees to come in so that not everybody needs the elevator between, 7:30 and 9:30 in the morning, and that it's spread out over the course of the day. Because that's kind of the number one, what's the word I'm looking for? Cross point, that everybody has to go through, right? Anyway, other smart building components, integrated digital media systems for communications and messaging, again, maps, wayfind, and you'll see on these slides that they all start to tie together. Location-based services, visitor management, emergency communications, integrated digital signs is also a fundamental part of an integrated smart building program. At the end of the day, digital asset management. Now you can take all of this information, all this data, whether it's energy data, occupancy data, location data, elevator data. It's not only for the purpose of the occupants and the enterprises within the space, but also for the owner of the building to do much more digital and efficient asset management. So we mentioned remote operations earlier, resiliency, reliability, maintainability, sustainability, having a, continuous, what's the word I'm looking for? Response management program. We talked about global monitoring of real estate assets, really understanding as a real estate owner, how are my assets currently operating? Are they operating efficiently? Are they occupied? Should I be turning the lights off and the HVAC off in rooms that aren't being used and that won't be used for the next 6 weeks? So a lot of different components of that tie into that digital asset management, obviously for the purpose of maximizing the value of the asset for any of those real estate owners who are on the call. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with distributed antenna systems, obviously a major component of communications within the facility. It still blows my mind that we go into buildings and lose cell phone coverage. So this should have been one that checked the box, 10, 15 years ago, but I still have to mention it because for buildings that don't have one, that need one, we need to get them in. So with that, just to kind of wrap up, I think my advice to those who haven't embarked on a smart building program is really to pull together the different stakeholders within the organization, engineering, HR, corporate real estate, energy management, all the different groups that have a stake in your smart building journey, and agree on what your business priorities are, right? I gave you a lot of samples in the presentation today. document the use cases you're trying to solve for. It's really important when you start documenting these to realize that the use cases you're trying to solve for, somebody else is trying to solve for too, especially around occupancy. And use that information and use that to determine your workplace strategy. Workplace strategies are changing drastically now post-COVID-19. Even at WeWork, we're looking at, different occupancy levels and designing to a higher number of square feet per person as opposed to a lower number of square feet per person. Being able to identify, you can sit in, please make sure that if someone's sitting in this seat, then the next seat is empty, and then the next seat is full, and the next seat is empty. And that's completely changing the workplace strategy so that our members feel safe coming back into work, knowing that we're maintaining social distancing strategies within the workplace. And then, it's really important to put together that holistic strategy. The same way if you go to build a house, you got to have a vision, a plan, a blueprint. You have to understand what it looks like at the end of the day, what you want the whole thing to look like before you start doing the individual pieces. It's no different with the smart building. You've really got to put together that holistic, comprehensive strategy first before you start to determine what vendors am I going to use, what technology am I going to use, how am I going to put in an indoor positioning system, if you don't have that all mapped out in a strategy first. And that allows you to develop that comprehensive plan. Then you determine what do you have in place now. Some buildings are going to be much more applicable for a lot of these solutions than others. Identify your gaps, your needs, your priorities. Develop the business case. Put together an ROI analysis based on your business plan. And again, business drivers have changed, so make sure that you're putting those health and wellness, COVID-19, social distancing, put all of those items up at the top of the business case now, because that's really what's going to drive investment in technology. Okay. And then put together a roadmap and a timeline for implementation. And even if things change going forward, which I know they will, whether it's a year or two, and this, COVID-19 is not the primary business driver anymore, we still need to keep that on the back burner to make sure that we're ready for the next crisis, or we're ready for the next business driver, and that the building is ready and is nimble and is able to be, very quickly adjusted to support whatever the next business driver is. So in terms of what's next, I kind of talked a lot about what's now, location-based services, having that seamless experience from home to office. I think obviously we see a lot more people working from home, and we're going to want to make sure that we've got a seamless experience that mirrors whether you're working from a home office or whether you're working from a physical office, that blue dot wayfinding, finding points of interest, things like that. I do think personal profiles and that customized experience, again, is a major business driver that we're going to continue to see. At the end of the day, when you start collecting data around the use of the facility, whether it's energy, whether it's occupancy, everything starts to become predictive. You can start to predict what your occupancy is going to be like tomorrow or next week, and you can start to see that occupancy on a Monday is a lot different than occupancy on a Friday. There's talk about, enterprise clients staggering when people come into work. So maybe you come in on Mondays and Wednesdays, and another team comes in on Thursdays and Fridays, and everybody takes, one day off. And then that way we're staggering the use of the workplace. So it provides that social distancing. And you can predict then what your occupancy is going to be like tomorrow. Voice activation is one of my favorite. I do think that we're moving to a world of, Alexa, turn on the lights, Alexa, adjust my temperature, Google, please close my garage door.
God, no, no.
Yeah,
no.
My whole house. As a matter of fact, I should have walked through and I've given you a demo of my house. I can walk into every room and tell Alexa, turn on lights, turn on the fan, change the temperature, lock the door. So I do think that voice activation, AI, that's going to be a big one coming down the road as well. Virtual reality, augmented reality, digital twins. Look at being in a position now to be able to literally, put on a virtual reality headset and be able to operate your building in the comfort of and the safety of your own home through VR, AR, and digital twins. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up there. I know we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm happy to continue the conversation and take any other questions you may have. Thank you.
So a good one came in. So what do you see as far as wireless networks? And I want to key into this in terms of 5G and CBRS, but will the occupancy sensors and all the smart building things, how are we connecting those? Because I think a lot of the landlords that are on this call, on this Zoom call, are getting bombarded by a guy who's got a sensor that does this, and a person, a company that has a sensor that does that, and a lighting company that does this. So they're saying, okay, I don't know if I should use this, I should use this. It's hard for them to put a plan together. And then what do they connect that to from a backbone in the building? Are they using a 5G network? Should they be looking at a CBRS network? Do they have direct fiber to these sensors? If you were designing from the ground up with your plan, as you said, what would you design today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing you need to do is, again, put together the use cases that you're trying to solve for. And that's going to determine the technology that you use to solve for those use cases. So you don't end up in a situation where you've got, 20 different sensors collecting similar data. In my opinion, in a perfect world, we're not going to need sensors. We're going to be using the mobile device as your primary sensor for location in the same way we do outside the building. For today's conversation, though, most buildings don't have an indoor positioning system and don't have the ability to collect that level of data through the cell phone, although we do have the ability to even collect it through the Wi-Fi system now, as long as Wi-Fi is on, and you can count number of Wi-Fi devices within the facility. So there is a certain amount of data that we can collect now that is not sensor-driven. Now, if you determine that you want to have desk-level occupancy data, 100% accuracy at the desk level, and you don't have an indoor positioning system and you can't triangulate down to the exact location of that cell phone, then you're probably going to want to install sensors. Now, I'm not going to weigh in on what types of sensors. There's PIR sensors, there's, that go under the desk, there's video and camera-based sensors that go in the ceiling that can count number of people and identify location of people. There's a lot of different technologies out there. I think what you need to do is quite frankly, hire a consultant that doesn't represent a specific product that can help you put together that plan. Identify what data do you need, how are you going to collect that data, and what are you going to do with it. And what data you need is going to be driven by your use cases. Some clients are not going to need to know desk level occupancy. So if you have a situation where you are an enterprise client that has dedicated offices, then you're only going to need room level sensors. You're not going to need desk level sensors. If you have an open floor plan and flexible seating, co-working type of environment, you're probably going to want to know desk level occupancy. So it really depends upon what data you're trying to collect and how you're trying to do it. And that consultant can help with determining what type of physical sensor or physical device or technology you should use to collect that information. So as I mentioned, there's sensors under the desk, there's sensors in the ceiling, there's lighting control systems that can collect that data for you. The mobile app can collect that data for you. It's all part of putting together that overall master plan.
So,
and then in terms of how do you connect them, you can physically connect them over wire. You can connect them wirelessly. There are any number of ways to get that data from the device back to a central server, where then you can use that data and feed it to the other systems, depending upon the use cases that you're trying to solve for.
And I think the questions that are coming in, and they're trying, and I'm trying to do this also, to get some of your take on the connectivity piece of it, the communications piece of it yourself. So the question came in: how do you see Wi-Fi 6, millimeter wave, 5G, CBRS playing out over the next several years? In other words, you've talked a lot about the devices themselves, and we understand, I think, your mentality on all the things you may need. But from the standpoint of the wireless internet beyond DAS, how do you see it playing out? Have you studied that, or is that sort of you more focused on the smart building sensor piece?
Yeah, no, but it's all dependent. I mean, there's a difference between the data you're collecting and then how you're getting the data out of the building to the different applications and what the transport mechanism is. And to be honest with you, I don't have a preference in terms of whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's Bluetooth, whether it's hardwire, whether it's 5G, whether it's CBRS. That's really more of an internal IT discussion in terms of how you're going to get the data from one point to another. So I don't know that there's a clear winner in the space right now. There's not a lot of buildings that are 5G enabled. There's not a lot of devices that are 5G enabled. So to be talking about how we're sending, are we going to be using 5G to transmit that data? Right now, no. Right now the primary technologies are Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, based on the implementations that I've done myself personally and other ones that I've seen in the industry around the world. And whether it's physical wire infrastructure or whether it's wireless, I think that component of it is going to continue to change and evolve over time. So I don't know that you should narrow in on what, one specific technology for transport, because it's always going to get, better, faster, cheaper in terms of how we get that data from point A to point B. Gotcha. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but that's my, that's my take.
I get where you're going with that. So one of the other things, and I don't know what you did here, but somehow the amount of people that came onto this Zoom video call continued to go up and up and up as you spoke. So I just want you to know that.
Well, what's funny is my phone has been sitting here. I got about 17 texts in the middle of the presentation that, I know who they are. And I'm like, I'm in the middle of a talk. I can't talk to you right now.
Yeah, but so your numbers kept going up. But one of the funny things is somebody wrote in, kidding around, obviously, please don't speak commands that activate my home automation system. So before when you said, Alexa, turn on the lights, somebody's light went on somewhere. But,
yeah. Well, I always tell the story that my kids don't use a light switch. My grandchildren won't know what a light switch is. They walk into their rooms and they tell Alexa to turn on the lights. And that's the world that we're going to be living in going forward. I think that, we're in a very fortunate place in terms of technology and adoption of technology, because we do have the ability to collect all of this data. In most cases, we already have all this data. People just don't know what to do with it. Yeah. They don't know how to visualize it. They don't know, more importantly, not just for them to visualize it, but how do they enable their employees and occupants to visualize that data so that it adds value to them as an occupant of the building and really drive that occupant experience.
I will tell you why it scares the crap out of me to have it at the workplace, because it scares the hell out of me to have it at home, and I don't. I have a friend who has a young child, and she just started to walk, and she got out of her diaper one day and took off and zipped across the house. And this person said, oh, I love it, when there's a naked baby running around. And Alexa said, I'll make a note of that. And I got to tell you, that gave me pause. So, Alexa is listening to things we say and maybe say inadvertently.
Yeah. Well, you look at what Apple and Google are talking about now in terms of identifying, location of people who are infected with COVID. You talk about Big Brother watching. I think here's my take on that. If the benefits you're giving to people around location-based services are greater than the risk of them giving up their privacy, that's when more and more people will give up that privacy. It's for the benefit not only of them as an individual, but for the benefit of the greater good. And there's still going to be people out there that are never going to do it. They'll never give up information.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Our next panel is starting in 2 minutes. Thank you so much for doing this. I just wanted to thank all of our exhibitors and our sponsors for this event that made this possible. I want to thank Extenet, JMA, Zenfi, CTS, especially Ericsson, who was the first company to jump in and join us as an exhibitor, Geoverse, IP Access, ANS, Edge Micro, Bicells, Argent Associates, Cradlepoint, LG Tech, and Dart Points. And Darlene, thank you so much for being with us today.
Welcome.
Your information is terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate the opportunity.
And
Stay
thank
safe.
you all for attending. Bye now.
All right. Bye, thanks.